We have the latest 11 o'clock advisory just in.
Your weather authority has it, so let's send it over to Chief Meteorologist Betty Davis and Hurricane Specialist Brian Norcross.
Good evening. Dorian remains powerful. Those maximum sustained winds holding at 150 miles per hour. And Calvin and Nicole, as you mentioned right off the top, Broward and Miami-Dade, we're still out of the cone, and we expect that to continue to be the case. But let's take a look at this closely, Brian, and inspect it. Let's see if we've had any shifts. Are you noticing anything?
Well, if you're looking at home and you get out your magnifying glass, you'll see that the edge of the cone here is actually a little bit closer to us than it was. But that's a head fake, because what's happened is the storm is just slowing down. It's the geometry of the cone, so it's just a matter of timing. It had nothing to do with being more of a threat or anything else. It's just the track really has not changed appreciably, so it's nothing to do with, I know there are people that notice that at home, right? Even though it's about a half an inch here on our map, but I know people notice that at home.
All right, so we wish the track were different for the Northwest Bahamas, because this thing is just so powerful. Maximum sustained winds at 150 miles per hour, pressure 940 millibars, moving west at 8 miles per hour, Category 4 Hurricane Brian, and there are things going on structurally that let you know it's strong.
Yes, then we actually have a radar image that came out of the NOAA research aircraft. So this is the NOAA P3s. You have the Air Force Hurricane Hunters and the NOAA Hurricane Hunters, and these are the scientific mission. And they have 3 radars on that plane, and the one under the belly is the one that gives us this picture. It doesn't get through the rain, so there's more rain out here. It suffers from rain attenuation, or distance attenuation, actually, because it's kind of shielded under the plane. But there you can see the eye. It's about 16 miles across, obviously almost perfectly circular eye. Just kind of an interesting thing that this really tells the story of this incredible hurricane.
It does, and we talked about how on that left side it looks as though some of the clouds are sort of fading away in a way. And
yes, so what's happening is the air is coming out of the top of the hurricane and spreading out and down. You know, if you lived here during Hurricane Andrew, the day before Andrew was really a beautiful, warm, sunny day. That's what's happening on the front side. Same idea on the front side of this one. By the way, if you're kind of a weather nerd and you've been watching on the internet the observations from the airplanes flying in there, they had observations of these extreme winds up in the 170s and like that, but the National Hurricane Center discounted them because now we've learned, now that we've had 3 years, the past 3 years, Category 5 hurricanes, and they've been able to measure them with these new instruments, they found these extreme winds, and they think that they're false. So they're discounting them pending more research. So we'll see what happens in the future. But in any case, this incredible hurricane, you can see its path is unfortunately directly at Grand Bahama Island here, and Abaco's there, and where I drew the line there, that's Marsh Harbor. That's where Janice Fernandez is, and it's going to be there tomorrow.
Yeah, those tropical storm force winds, they're getting close.
Getting close. They'll be there tomorrow, midday to mid-afternoon.
All right, so here's another look at the projected path. Category 4 as it's coming into the Northwest Bahamas, Sunday evening, and then Monday, still in that, Monday AM, Monday evening, still in that, pretty close.
The closeness of these lines tells you how slow it's moving, because each one of these lines is 12 hours apart. So it's crawling through the Bahamas. Unfortunately, this stall is happening right over those islands. Now, if you look at the numbers here, you'll see them slowly going down, because these kinds of hurricanes, ultra-intense hurricanes, always weaken and expand, and the thinking is that's going to happen. These are really estimates. You really have to think of this, though, as almost the worst-case scenario for have an intense hurricane like this stalling over the Bahamian Islands. I mean, we're just fearful for what's going to happen on those islands here in the next couple of days. Then it moves to the north, and initially the tracks are mostly offshore here, obviously, but so if it comes a little bit like this, remember, this is going to be a very strong hurricane, so it doesn't have to come ashore to be threatening, and that's why from the Palm Beaches up to the Treasure Coast, they put up that tropical storm watch, which just means tropical storm winds are possible.
Impacts can extend beyond the cone.
Right,
Cannot
but
say that
possible,
enough.
right?
Yeah.
Now, they're going to put it up farther north if the tracks continue like this. It's just in timing. Remember, the watches go up about 48 hours before the winds might arrive. So it just hasn't gotten there yet because the storm is going kind of so darn slow. And then here it goes up to the north. Now, tracks are offshore, but also very Hurricane Matthew-ish right along the coast. So
they could take a battering right
along
and
there. Remember, Michael was a Category 1 up in here. So this, if it did come up the coast, would be stronger than Matthew was in 2016. So nothing good here. Now, in terms of the size of the storm, this is kind of interesting, Betty.
It is. So let's talk about this wind field, the hurricane force winds and then the tropical storm force winds, and place it all in the cone and talk about the difference it makes as to where the storm ends up.
Right, and this is why there's a tropical storm watch for Palm Beach County on up to the Treasure Coast. So the tropical storm winds are these in the yellow here all the way across. The hurricane force winds are in this part here, and these are hurricane force gusts. So watch it as it comes up the middle of the cone. There it goes over the Bahamas. And there you see the tropical storm force winds are close to Palm Beach County and the Treasure Coast, but in theory, just offshore. But if it's more toward the left side of the cone, then they're for sure over the coast. And that's why the cone says, you know, we have to account for tracks across the cone, and they come closer to us. So if it would track to the left of the cone, we would have gustier winds here. The thought is not dangerous winds, not winds that would be too troublesome, but gusty, and we'd have to be aware of that. That's in the Monday, Tuesday timeframe.
It is, and we'll talk more about the extended forecast here coming up in a little while. But we do want to get into a discussion of the models, because that is what everybody has been looking at all week long, and the difference in the models. And then once we got all the consensus going, as far as, especially as it's coming toward the Bahamas, and then a little bit more about where the turn would take place, we all started to breathe a little bit better.
Right. So we have confidence, I mean, because all the models are on top of each other, except remember, if you've been watching us, you know that we can't show the European like this, but we'll show you that in a second. And the red ones are the consensus. They're an average of the various models, and they include the European. So the red ones are the ones the National Hurricane Center normally looks at, and that's what you want to look at home, the ones called TVCN and TVCX. When you look at home on the spaghetti plots, that's what you want to look at. And look here, this is not terribly far off of the Florida East Coast. So that's how we know they're going to end up putting up watches and maybe even warnings up there. And this one, the blue one, that's the American HWRF, it's called. It's the Hurricane Wharf. I have to think. It's very late. Anyway, it's the American model, specially made for hurricane intensity. So that's a little concerning. But anyway, it's going to take some days for that to happen, and no doubt the models will shift in that time, and you can see how close the consensus comes to the Carolina coast. It's really very, very close.
All right, so we stepped the discussion ahead to the Euro and where it lines up with the other track guidance.
Right, and this was the morning run that we get in the afternoon of the Euro, and it was a little bit south. The one that we can't show you on TV, nobody can show on TV, that came in a little later today, is actually right on top of this. So we have a lot of confidence in this part of the track. Where it gets less confident, of course, is when it goes to the north, where the European is divergent and the HWRF is divergent. And, of course, it's farther in advance. So when the farther in advance you go, the more divergent the models normally are.
Right, but seeing it farther away from the coast, the Euro, I mean, we would definitely applaud that. The farther away, the better.
The better, right. But then we'll have to see, because we're talking about 4 days in the future here. So as we've seen, a lot can happen in that 4 days.
Just 2 days ago. Remember where we were?
Right. Okay, so here we are with the steering.
High pressure. There it is, steering this along westward toward the northwest of Bahamas. And we're at Saturday evening, but then comes that slowdown and the steering flow being questionable, not as strong.
Right, because you have this kind of low pressure in here compared to high pressure there. The high pressure is driving it. When it gets to the low pressure, it doesn't have anything driving it anymore. So it comes toward the Bahamas. Now it runs into this gap between the high pressure areas, and that's what makes it stall. Now, the thinking is, and what the models are saying, is that the high pressure will build in and and lift it to the north into this gap, and this gap will be well enough established to allow a path north for the hurricane. Now, it's moving very slowly. Could things be a little different? How strong is this high holding it back, this high pushing it this way? That's why there's so much uncertainty here in the possibilities, just because it's far enough in the future that modeling exactly where those high pressure systems are is not possible with modern technology.
Right.
But that's where we are.
Right, but we're getting closer in time as it relates to us, and it's I know good to see for a lot of people there that we're not in the cone. So
yes, we're not in the cone, and we have confidence that the Category 4 hurricane is not coming to Miami-Dade and Broward County. And by the way, let's answer the question about the shutters. If it were me, I would not put up shutters in Miami-Dade and Broward because there's some risk in putting up shutters. You can hurt yourself doing that. That's me. Okay, we'll have some gusty winds, but we are not under a tropical storm watch. So, because if of all the questions that come in, I'd say a quarter or a third of them are, should we still put up the shutters?
Yeah.
So it's a good question.